So there you have it. 4 principles that transform how men respond to you. Detachment is emotional ownership, not indifference. He feels your energy shift before you announce it. Your silence teaches what words couldn't. And true detachment is devotion to your own peace. When you detach, you're not walking away from love. You're walking back to your dignity. And from there, the right love finds you differently. The man who's meant for you won't be repelled by your standards. He'll be inspired by them. He won't be threatened by your peace. He'll want to contribute to it. He won't be confused by your detachment. He'll be motivated to earn your attachment. At 60 and beyond, you have the wisdom to know that love shouldn't cost you your peace, your dignity, or your self-respect. You have the experience to recognize that the right person will add to your life, not require you to subtract from yourself to accommodate them. A woman in harmony with her spirit is like a river flowing. She goes where she will without pretense and arrives at her destination prepared to be herself and only herself, Maya Angelou reminds us. What's one insider story this video brought to mind for you? I'd love to hear your perspective. Share it in the comments below. And while you're here, take a second to like and subscribe so you'll never miss the reflections that remind you just how worthy you already are. And I'm Vernon, and thanks for watching my video. Number 1. Silence is the first power move. The moment he leaves, your first impulse might be to explain, plead, or show him you're still the one. You want to send that text, "I hope you're happy." You want to call and ask, "Was I not enough?" You want to fight for what you think you lost. Resist it all. The moment you choose silence, no reaction, no revenge, no desperate final words, is when you start the real shift. This isn't about being cold or vindictive. This is about understanding that your silence holds more power than any words you could ever speak. Most women think silence means weakness, that not fighting means giving up. But silence is the ultimate power move because it forces him to sit with his decision without your emotional reaction to distract from it. When you don't give him the satisfaction of your breakdown, he's left alone with the weight of what he's done. Your silence becomes his echo chamber. Every quiet moment in his new relationship, he'll wonder, why isn't she fighting for me? Why isn't she falling apart? Your absence of drama becomes more haunting than any scene you could have made. As the Stoic philosopher Epictetus taught, it's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters. Your non-reaction becomes the most powerful reaction of all. Men expect you to chase, to beg, to prove your worth one more time. When you don't give them that familiar dance, when you don't play the role of the abandoned woman desperately trying to win them back, you become unpredictable. And unpredictable women are unforgettable women. This silence isn't about punishing him. It's about preserving your dignity. It's about refusing to hand over your power to someone who just demonstrated they don't value it. It's about understanding that the moment you start explaining why you're worth keeping is the moment you've already lost. Your silence sends the clearest message possible. I don't need to convince anyone of my worth. I know it, and I'll only share it with someone who recognizes it without explanation.
3 months from now, when the excitement of his new relationship settles into routine, your silence will still be echoing. He'll realize he never got closure from you because you never gave him the drama he expected. That absence of reaction will feel like unfinished business forever. If you've ever broken your own silence hoping he'd come back, share this video with a friend who's tempted to do the same. But silence is only powerful when it's followed by action, and the next step will surprise him even more.
Number 2, shift the spotlight. Stop watching him. Start glowing yourself. You can give someone the best years of your life and still be the one they leave behind. That's exactly what happened to Diane, 62, when her husband left her for a woman half her age. The first month, Diane was destroyed. She spent her days scrolling through social media, analyzing their photos, torturing herself with evidence of their happiness. Then something clicked. Diane realized she'd spent so much energy watching his new life that she'd forgotten she still had one of her own. She enrolled in pottery classes, something he'd always called a waste of time. She booked a solo trip to Italy, something he'd never wanted to do. She started painting again, something she'd abandoned when he said it was impractical. Slowly, methodically, Diane rebuilt an identity that had nothing to do with being his wife. 18 months later, he showed up at her door, not to reconcile, just to see how you've been. But the woman who answered wasn't the broken wife he'd left behind. She was radiant, centered, genuinely unbothered by his presence. He stayed for coffee and left looking confused, like he'd lost something he didn't realize was valuable until it was transformed beyond his reach. This is the psychological shift that creates regret. When you stop dimming your light to accommodate someone else's comfort and start glowing with your own authentic energy. The woman he left was managing his moods, tiptoeing around his preferences, making herself smaller to fit his vision of a partner. But the woman you become after he leaves, she's living at full volume, pursuing interests he never supported, radiating joy he never inspired. Men don't regret losing the woman who was always available, always accommodating, always there. They regret losing the woman who discovered she was magnificent without them. This isn't about revenge or showing off. This is about remembering who you were before you started editing yourself for his approval. It's about investing in the parts of yourself that he either ignored or actively discouraged. When mutual friends report back to him about your pottery exhibition, your published poem, your solo travels, your new confidence, that's when regret hits. Not because you're trying to make him jealous, but because you're genuinely thriving in ways that his presence never allowed. The cruelest regret of all is realizing you held someone back from their full potential. When he sees you flourishing without him, he'll understand that his love wasn't adding to your life, it was subtracting from it. As Maya Angelou once said, "There is no greater agony than bearing an untold story inside you." After he leaves, you finally get to tell your whole story, and it's more beautiful than anything you shared with him. So where should you direct that new energy next? Right into the places he never believed in. And that's exactly where step 3 begins.
Number 3. Invest in places he was never interested in. The cave you fear to enter holds the treasure you seek, Joseph Campbell wrote. For most women, that cave is the parts of themselves they abandoned to keep a man comfortable. Tanya, 58, my cousin, whose partner of 8 years never showed interest in her writing. He'd roll his eyes when she mentioned wanting to publish her poetry, calling it a hobby for lonely housewives. When he left her for someone more practical, Tanya was devastated, but also, quietly, liberated. 6 months later, she published a collection of poems under a pen name. The book gained local attention, and she was invited to speak at a community event. She didn't announce it on social media, didn't seek his attention. She simply lived her truth without his permission for the first time in years. He found out through a mutual friend. Suddenly, the woman he dismissed as impractical was being celebrated for the very creativity he'd belittled. The regret hit him like a physical blow. Not just that he'd lost her, but that he'd prevented her from becoming who she was meant to be. This is the deepest cut. When he realizes that his love wasn't supporting your growth, it was stunting it. Every relationship requires some compromise, but when you've been dimming your authentic self to maintain someone's comfort, their departure becomes your permission slip to shine fully.
The older male doctor's voice was warm, clear, and calm, with a deep timbre and a deliberately slow, thoughtful pace. The older male doctor's voice was warm, clear, and calm, with a deep timbre and a deliberately slow, thoughtful pace. The older male doctor's voice was warm, clear, and calm, with a deep timbre and a deliberately slow, thoughtful pace. The spaces he was never interested in, your creativity, your ambitions, your spiritual growth, your intellectual pursuits, these become your freedom zones. Without his subtle or not so subtle discouragement, you discover capabilities you'd forgotten you had. Regret often doesn't come from your absence. It comes from watching you succeed in areas he either ignored or actively discouraged. When he sees you thriving in spaces he never valued, he realizes he wasn't just wrong about them, he was wrong about you. This isn't about proving him wrong out of spite. This is about proving yourself right out of self-respect. When you invest deeply in the interests and dreams he never supported, you're not just building a new life, you're building a better version of yourself. The most painful regret is realizing you were standing in the way of someone's potential. When your former partner sees you excelling in areas he dismissed, achieving goals he called unrealistic, becoming the person he never encouraged you to be, that's when the true weight of what he lost hits him. Your success in places he was never interested in becomes proof that his love was conditional, limited, and ultimately inadequate for who you really are. Tag a friend who lost herself in a man and now needs to remember who she was before him. And once you've rebuilt those forgotten parts of yourself, it's time to elevate even higher, to a version of you that his past self will never get access to again.
Number 4. Become unreachable
to the past version of him. This is where you rise beyond proving your worth and start living in such complete alignment with yourself that he no longer even qualifies for your attention. Becoming unreachable doesn't mean changing your phone number or blocking him everywhere, though you certainly can. It means operating from such a high standard of self-worth that the version of him who left you for someone else simply cannot access the woman you've become. When he sends those inevitable breadcrumb texts, thinking of you, how are you doing, I hope you're well, you don't respond with anger or desperation. You don't respond at all. Not because you're playing games, but because you're genuinely living in a world where his validation is no longer currency you accept. The man who could discard you so easily doesn't get access to the woman who's learned her true value. The person who treated your love as replaceable doesn't get to sample the love of the person who now knows she's irreplaceable. This is psychological warfare at its most sophisticated. You're not fighting him. You're simply existing in a realm where his opinion of you is irrelevant. As Buddha taught, you yourself, as much as anybody in the entire universe, deserve your love and affection. Once you truly understand this, his attempts to re-enter your orbit feel almost insulting.
Your unreachable energy isn't cold or bitter. It's serene and complete. You're not avoiding him out of hurt. You're simply too fulfilled to need anything he might offer. When mutual friends mention his regrets, his second thoughts, his questions about your well-being, you feel genuinely indifferent. This indifference is the cruelest regret of all. He left expecting you to remain accessible, hoping that if his new relationship didn't work out, you'd be there waiting. But the woman he left no longer exists. The woman you've become has standards he's already proven he can't meet. When someone shows you they're willing to trade you for an upgrade, believing them is self-respect. When they come back hoping you're still available for downgrade treatment, your unavailability is self-love. Your unreachable era isn't about punishment, it's about protection. You're protecting the woman you've worked so hard to become from the man who nearly destroyed the woman you used to be. Comment below. What does your unreachable era look like? Paint the picture. It might inspire someone else. But being unreachable is only part of the story. The final step is where you stop looking back entirely and live so fully his memory simply fades into the background.
Number 5. Live so fully that his memory becomes irrelevant. The ultimate power move isn't making him regret losing you. It's reaching a point where whether he regrets it or not becomes completely irrelevant to your happiness. This final step is the most profound because it shifts you from reactive power to creative power. You're no longer building a life to make him regret his choice. You're building a life so rich, so fulfilling, so aligned with your deepest values that his regret becomes background noise to your symphony. Living fully after heartbreak means embracing the paradox that the best revenge is genuinely forgetting revenge exists. It's waking up excited about your day, not because you're trying to prove anything to anyone,
but because your days have become genuinely worth being excited about. This is when you start dating again, not to replace him or make him jealous, but because you've remembered what it feels like to be valued properly. This is when you make new friends who appreciate parts of your personality he never noticed. This is when you travel to places he never wanted to go, try experiences he never would have supported. Become the version of yourself that his limitations prevented. The cruelest irony is that by the time you reach this level of fulfillment, his regret, which once would have meant everything to you, means absolutely nothing. You've grown beyond the need for his validation so completely that even his genuine remorse feels like yesterday's weather, acknowledged but irrelevant.
Men sense this shift energetically before they understand it logically. When you've truly moved into fullness of life, when you've stopped leaving any part of yourself waiting for his return, when you've closed the door, not out of anger, but out of genuine disinterest, that's when his regret reaches its peak. But here's the beautiful twist. By then, you don't need his regret anymore. You've built something so much better than what you lost that his remorse feels almost quaint, like missing a flight that would have taken you somewhere you no longer want to go. Rumi once said, "Let yourself be silently drawn by the strange pull of what you really love. It will not lead you astray." When you follow that pull completely, when you build a life around what genuinely draws your soul rather than what keeps someone else comfortable, his regret becomes proof that he was never aligned with your highest good anyway. The woman who lives this fully doesn't inspire regret as revenge. She inspires it as a natural consequence of her radiance. And by the time that regret reaches its full intensity, she's already miles ahead, living a story he was never qualified to be part of. But sometimes, when they finally feel that loss, they come back, texting, calling, saying they've changed. And that's when a new challenge begins. Will you open the door again, or protect the peace you've rebuilt? To navigate that moment with wisdom and strength, watch my previous video. Men beg for second chances. Don't let them hurt you again. Because the right response isn't about anger, it's about honoring how far you've come. You can find the link in the description below. So, by now, you've learned the key steps to turn heartbreak into quiet power. When you go silent with dignity, shift the focus back to yourself. Invest in the parts of you he overlooked. Become unreachable to the version of him that left, and ultimately live so fully that his regret no longer matters. Everything changes. The moment you stop waiting for his regret is the moment he realizes what he lost wasn't just your body or your companionship, it was your energy, your light, your irreplaceable essence. And that recognition will follow him long after you've stopped caring whether it does. Elizabeth Gilbert reminds us, "You were born to be a player. You were meant to be here. This moment is yours." The deepest truth about heartbreak after 60 is that it's not an ending, it's an excavation. When someone leaves, they don't just take themselves out of your life. They also take all the ways you were dimming yourself to accommodate them.
Have your own story of heartbreak, healing, or rediscovery? Share it in the comments. Your voice might be exactly what another woman needs to hear today. And before you go, don't forget to like and subscribe for more soul-deep conversations about love, boundaries, and self-worth after 60. And I'm Vernon. Thanks for watching my video.